Welcome to the second episode of the Fishbowl. We are your hosts. I am Mike Kosak.
And I'm Stephanie Schneider.
And each month we'll be taking a plunge into cybersecurity threats, from nation-state activity to cybercrime trends and general cybersecurity issues that we're tracking as cyber threat intelligence analysts. We're going to be doing this every month and rotating through different regions, doing a regional threat overview. So last month, if you missed it, we started with Asia Pacific. So you can check out our inaugural episode if you're new here and haven't had a listen. This month, we're going to be taking a look at Europe. So for our special guest, which we do every month as well, we've got Daniel Card. He'll be joining us later, who is a cybersecurity consultant at PwnDefend. And we'll be talking to him about his consulting work for both the public and private sector. And lessons learned, as well as a discussion around scattered spiders, recent attacks, plus the implications of the UK's Online Safety Act. And so since this is only our second episode, you may not have heard our initial introduction. So you're still getting to know us, we assume. So we just wanted to take a quick minute to reintroduce ourselves. So again, my name is Mike Kosak. I am the senior intel analyst here at LastPass. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years. I've been in the private sector for about 13 years, most of that within cyber threat intelligence. Before that, I was in counterterrorism with a defense intelligence agency. And I am supposed to share a fun fact. So here you go, Steph. I don't even know if I've told you this before. I have actually been sort of hit by lightning once. And obviously lived to tell the tale. Sadly, no powers gained. But it was the summer between freshman and sophomore year in college. My mom had come in while I was listening to music and said, "Hey, there's a thunderstorm rolling through. You should probably turn that off." And as a petulant teenager, I was like, "Yeah, whatever, Mom." And as I reached out to turn off the stereo, a bolt of lightning hit the house. I watched everything kind of blow up, like the entire plug blew up right in front of me, and like lightning arced it, electricity arced into my hand. I passed out, collapsed, stood back up, ran into the hallway, checked. No, like I said, no lightning powers, nothing like that, sadly. So yeah, now I just can kind of tell you when the weather's going to change.
That is an amazing fun fact. First of all, I appreciate you participating and going along with this idea of sharing a fun fact, because I love sharing that. And also that explains so much, Mike. I mean, is that where you got your curly hair too?
Yes, it was. Yep, absolutely straight before.
That's fantastic. I'm Stephanie Schneider, and I'm a cyber threat intelligence analyst. I've been in this role for the last 5 years. Before working at LastPass, I worked at Bank of America, and I actually came into the CTI cybersecurity space with an international affairs background. My fun fact is that I'm an avid runner. You will not get me to stop talking about whatever race I'm training for next. And I also love scuba diving. So I absolutely am a huge fan of our Fishbowl podcast name. It's very fitting. Sadly, I don't get to go scuba diving as much as I would like because I'm in DC, and it's really not the best place to see aquatic life unless you want to go for a dip in the Potomac River, which I do not.
Yeah, you can find some stuff in the Potomac. It's just, you're probably going to have to talk to the police after you see it.
Exactly. So first today, we're going to take a quick look at some regional threat activity trends that we're seeing play out in Europe. I wanted to highlight just a few things to kind of frame our discussion today. And one of the interesting things that came out of that reporting from doing that research is just the huge volume of attacks that European-based organizations face. IBM put out a great report. It's called the X-Force 2025 Threat Intelligence Index that found Europe is the third most targeted region after Asia Pacific and North America. And in Q2 2025, attacks against Europe really jumped. Europe experienced the highest year-over-year growth in regional attack volume. They also accounted for a quarter of reported ransomware incidents, coming in second place after North America at 53% in quarter two of 2025. Mike, do you want to talk about some of the factors driving this heightened threat environment we're seeing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's plenty to cover across the board, really, when we think about dynamics within a cyber threat environment. So geopolitically, of course, there's the war in Ukraine. So we've got nation state aspects there. There's cyber espionage, that sort of thing. There's the war in Gaza as well. There's hacktivist groups that are getting involved because of that. The rise in cybercrime, like you mentioned, certainly with ransomware, info stealers, which are certainly all the rage right now, and definitely, Europe is not immune from those attacks. So yeah, really just across the board, just a lot of factors going into that.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to dive into, a lot more than we have time for today. But so yeah, make sure that you go check out the LastPass Europe regional report that we are publishing in August if you want to dive deeper. So pivoting from kind of cybercrime, ransomware, it's a really great transition. Let's dive right into Scattered Spider. They've recently been seen, they've been very active, jumping from targeting the UK retail sector to insurance companies and then to airline, transportation sectors. And looks like they're continuing to be quite active in general. And it's also, we've seen a lot of government alerts come out, joint alerts on updated TTPs that we've seen from them. And really, there's just been this string of attacks, if we're looking specifically at Europe against UK retailers. In April, Marks and Spencer was hit by really just a devastating ransomware cyber attack with significant impacts. There were empty shelves across their stores. It took down their website. That took them 6 weeks to get back online. And they forecasted about a $40 million impact on their earnings. So, it's just devastating to this company. Really, ransomware is so effective in retail because attackers know that businesses in that space are likely to pay up because they need to get back online in order to be profitable. And also there's, just vulnerabilities in terms of, many retail systems are internet facing and handle sensitive financial information. So they're really just low hanging fruit for these ransomware operators. After they went after the UK retail space, Scattered Spider then pivoted to insurance and airlines, transportation, during the busy summer travel season. There were several arrests from this group in the UK. Several individuals were arrested in July, and activity from the group has dropped off for a while, but now it seems like they may be back collaborating with shiny hunters. And I mean, I know it can be kind of confusing keeping all of these cybercriminal groups straight, especially when there's, some overlap. But I know, Mike, you've been looking into Scattered Spider's affiliations with other groups like Shiny Hunters, and I think there is some overlap there, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I describe it as a sort of Venn diagram of shittiness, for lack of a better way to put it, where you've got when we sort of at the center, the primary area with all of the overlaps is what's called the COM, which is short for the community, which is an online presence, like an online exchange where groups like Shiny Hunters, Scattered Spider, Lapsus are really all sort of sharing their best practices, sharing their tactics, kind of really sharing that knowledge across the board. So, and as well as probably like personnel are moving back and forth. These groups have names, but it's not their affiliations more than anything. It's really easy for folks to move between them. And I think that explains some of the resiliency that we see with these groups as well. So like you mentioned some arrests from earlier this year. There have been previous arrests tied to Scattered Spider, and these groups just kind of keep on going because there is this corpus of knowledge that's shared through the COM. I will add as well, like if we look at the COM, not only are they associated with Lapsus and Scattered Spider, it's a fascinating and in some ways terrifying, but culture that kind of has this through line going all the way back to probably at least 2020 or before. with a previous iteration of this sort of community called the OG, which was a Telegram channel that started around SIM swapping and that sort of thing, and then now, kind of led to this.
So just kind of giving a little bit more background on Scattered Spider, right? I mean, they're infamous. They've been in the headlines a bunch over the last few years and are responsible for some really significant breaches. Social engineering is really the name of their game. They've been around since 2022 and have been linked to over 100 attacks across a bunch of different verticals, but they really tend to target one sector at a time. Just calling out a few kind of significant breaches. There was the hotel and casino giant MGM Resorts was popped back in 2023. It cost the company more than $100 million from disruption. And then there was an attack against Clorox also back in 2023. This was also highly disruptive, led to significant financial losses as well. Just recently, Clorox filed a $380 million lawsuit alleging that its IT vendor, Cognizant, failed to uphold their duties by handing over essentially the credentials to attackers without really adequately authenticating them.
When we think about their social engineering, it's simple, but it's not easy. And what really sets them apart is the amount of reconnaissance that they do. So, they'll look at LinkedIn profiles, they'll look at company profiles and everything else to get a sense of people's roles, of who's in IT, who the right people to try and imitate are. Because oftentimes when it comes to calling in, they'll call in, imitating an employee into the IT help desk to try and get credentials reset MFA, and then they'll pull some SIM swapping. That's kind of the core aspect that's often associated with Scattered Spider. But if we look at that evolution, originally it started with kind of the classic phishing, and then the social engineering aspect, where at the time they focused primarily on imitating IT employees and then reaching out to employees at the firm that they thought might have privileged access. So getting them to either using stolen credentials or something else, MFA bombing, finding a way to leverage those legitimate credentials to get their foot in the door, and then they'd run from there. They've also gotten a bit more technically savvy, not to say it wasn't there before, but they've kind of broadened it out. So they've moved from primarily focusing on data exfiltration to now focusing on, to a large degree, ransomware, particularly right now, the Dragon Force ransomware. They'll get in. We've seen a real stretch of them targeting VMware hypervisors to really maximize the impact and spread of ransomware as quickly as they can. They're very good at reconnaissance, and they've only gotten better at reconnaissance once they get their foot in the door to understand what's out there. They'll look for hard-coded credentials, credentials stored in clear text, stuff like that.
In response to this uptick of activity that we've seen, there have been a slew of advisories, joint advisories from the US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, giving some really good guidelines and recommendations for how you can protect yourself against these types of attacks. And I think something that's really, interesting with social engineering is that this tactic is going after the weakest link in cybersecurity, which is people. And so training help desk staff to really review identity before they do a password reset or MFA bypasses is so important. This was an issue for the Clorox breach I mentioned earlier, where their IT services help desk was a third party and allegedly handed over login information without questioning threat actor's identity or asking for that additional verification. And people are always the weakest link. So you really need to back up the people training with other strong cybersecurity practices.
That's a lot of pressure for them, and it can be very challenging, especially when this group in particular is so good at the reconnaissance and getting, learning, being able to impersonate people well by doing their homework with social media, sort of pattern of life and figuring out all that sort of data so they can at least sound as convincing as possible. So that can be really tricky, which goes to some of the other potential mitigations that come up in the report. Which, again, came out on July 29th. We'll drop a link to it. Actually, if you want to take a look at it, we'll drop a link in the write-up in the podcast, or for the podcast. So it should be right there for you. But they also cover stuff like good identity access controls, least privileged access, really being sharp about that. Phishing resistant MFA, the use of passkeys, segmentation to reduce lateral movement. Like I mentioned, one of the things that they've gotten really good at is getting their foot in the door, moving quickly, both in privilege escalation and then moving laterally. So the more you can do to disrupt that sort of kill cycle, the more prepared you are to protect yourself against this.
Now we're going to talk to our special guest, Daniel Card. Daniel Card is a special security consultant at PwnDefend. Daniel's a seasoned cybersecurity expert with over 20 years in the technology sector. He's an active member of BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT, and he specializes in helping organizations globally to protect, deter, and respond to cyber threats. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. We're happy to have you with us today.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about your background, because it is really interesting. You've served in a variety of roles.
So my background's just pretty normal, but I started working in tech support. I did like a modern apprenticeship. I have worked for like local gov. I've worked as a consultant. I worked for a logistics, nuclear, rail, do everything company. And I went consulting at about 23 years old. And then I've worked with hundreds of companies from a sales and from a delivery point of view. So I've worked in like a vast array of roles, from support operations through to project management, department head, team leader, multi-million-pound budgets through to very much not many budgets, and having to see what you can do to change someone's mind about their investment portfolio. Everyone always says, "What do you do?" And what I help people, hopefully before bang and before they have a problem, and then help people during unplanned incidents. Normally, people's passwords are cracked, so
Yeah.
which is a good point, isn't it? About like that is probably one of the key points, right? Like, what do you have to worry about as a person, or as a CISO, or as a CEO? You're like, passwords, because I think people get phished, right? People get phished, they lose creds, they install malware, that kind of stuff, and that's all at the end. That's slightly underneath the I broke something or something broke element.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the way down the line, you get like ransomware, and the probability of a ransomware event is really quite low. I won't try and remember the numbers, but statistically, it's not like, oh, I woke up and suddenly today all my assets are ransomed, and then the next day that's going to happen again, right? Like it's probably like a 1 in 10 year event for a company,
Yeah.
if that. But because obviously the global scale there's that, it doesn't make it not a thing. It's just not every org is getting pwned to that extent every day. I try and interview people in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So any taxis are going to, or any like social events, if someone will entertain me talking, I'm like, cool, can we look at your phone? And then can we go to the password settings, and then go to the compromise parts. Oh my God. And
One of those really simple things that is shockingly so common that we see, and just one of those like glaring security gaps that really should be.
it is. I reckon like every time I compromise anywhere on an assessment, like I wish I'd kept track for that granularity of data, right? Like, but you bust into a VPN, it's with a password generally, or an RCE, so we won't go too much into that space. But like the two routes are, you either got a net and you've been asking you, or you've like fished someone, or you've bought some credentials, or you found some credentials, because goodies don't do the other bits, right? And then you're like, okay, I've got creds, and you haven't got MFA. Now I'm in your VPN, and now I've got line of sight to a domain controller. And I'm joking about it, but it's real. That's actual findings. So we have got this massive sort of challenge between the hard work of taking a long look and saying, oh, where's all the credentials and key material, and why the .env file on the public internet, and why is everyone logging in with the same password?
It's kind of the classic. It's simple, but not easy. You know what I mean? You look at patching, you look at passwords. You take care of those two. It's like the classic sort of Pareto principle. You're going to be covered against most of the stuff, but you have to do that well. Otherwise, you're exactly right. You're just leaving the front door open for those things, because it's easy to miss those if you are not paying that attention to detail, if you're not like monitoring for exposures, if you're not scanning your environment for hard-coded credentials and everything else. And you're exactly right. If people aren't doing that right, they're just setting themselves up for risk.
Yeah. All the AI in the world won't save you if like scanner and scanner will leave you in a position where there's an RDP server on the net that someone's just logged into that isn't authorized. And then bad things will happen, right?
Yeah. Or if, as we were talking about earlier in the episode, we were talking about Scattered Spider, and some of their, and now Shiny Hunters as well. We were kind of talking about the COM in general, and sort of that overlap of as I referred to it earlier, the Venn diagram of shittiness, where you've got all these groups kind of overlapping with one another and sharing TTPs. But, you can have the best security in the world, but even some of those basic, relatively simple, again, simple but not easy social engineering aspects to get their foot in the door.
In your opinion, like, what do you think has made this group so effective? I mean, it's relatively simple social engineering tactics that we see, but they've just been able to, continue to go after various industries and pivot, globally, from more recently with the UK retail sector onto US insurance and transportation, aviation sector, and it just seems like they're really just really good at what they do.
Are they really good? Or is it just everyone's really quite crap at defending because most people haven't paid attention to stuff? I mean, who knows? I think here is the key problem, right? Like this idea that you're a threat actors are sophisticated. I mean, you go and read nation state reports, and some stuff obviously is like, pretty smart. Some stuff, pretty small amount of stuff. And then the rest of it, like teenagers kicking your front door in or phoning up and saying, "Hi, I've left my phone at home. Can you reset my account and reset MFA?" And someone saying, "Okay. Hey, can I have the domain admin credentials at the same time?" Just put me in domain admin's wicked. And some of this stuff is, again, it's like there's a conversation from a friend. This is ages ago, way before any spiders and slattered stuff came around, right? And I was like, if you lose DA creds, you should not be game over. This was the premise, right? And I reckon sub 1% of nets concur to that. Like, you should be able to lose your domain admin creds and not get pwned from the outside of the internet. So yeah, I think the point I have, and I made this like after Marks and Spencer's and the news and Co-op and Harrods, and I was like, people think about this as groups of people. I don't think they are. I think this is a collective, right? It's based on all the people that I've eaten. And I also think that the threat here is like, it's not, I don't care if it's Dave, Johnny, Jim, Jill, who gets it. This is, if someone is motivated and decides to come after you, are you resistant and resilient? And can you respond to that position? And I think the answer should be obvious that most organizations are not prepared for that style of threat approach, right? We talk about APTs and the word advanced and stuff, but I don't care about the advanced bit so much. I care about the persistent bit. TTP approach isn't stupid, right? Thinking that it's not intelligent would be completely wrong, because if you're attacking an org in, say, I don't know, Luton in the UK, and you throw and you want to connect to a VPN in Luton, and the staff are based in Luton, I don't want to pick Luton, but whatever, and you could just get someone in Luton to give you their residential IP. You could use a residential proxy service. You could send a mobile phone with a battery pack stuck to it into Luton with a 5G, 4G SIM card in it, and you could proxy through that. Like, there's a load of ways. Sorry, don't everyone copy me on that idea, by the way. But like, that makes it makes it really difficult to detect, right? So you've had someone phone the help desk and ask for a password reset. If you're a large enough org, that's not just a per day event, that's a per hour event, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got someone that's speaking the language that's local. You've got someone connecting from a local address. You've got they get in and then they are adaptive. Are these people super smart? Let's say there's 1,000 people actively participating in this crime collective. If you need someone to do something, I'm sure you just say, "Hey, can anyone do this?"
Yeah.
and someone says yes or no, and then they can join in, do the thing they're good at and get paid and get out, or whatever the dynamics are. And I guess that's fluid as well. And I think this makes it a really hard thing for the industry to talk about, because fluidity of threat is a concept that I don't think people can understand. Right.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a cool name. Everyone wants to have a brand. And I mean, someone set up a Telegram channel, didn't they? Like splattered shiny spiders, whatever.
Shiny sisters, hunters. Yeah.
And they're what, like, say that, people, threat actors watch the goodies watch the threat actors, to the point that people talk to each other and jokes and stuff, like, so they can see the stuff in the papers, because some people are like, oh, it's Dragon Force. And I was like, what, you mean a ransomware as a service operator? That is like me using a server in Azure, attacking someone, and someone saying, Microsoft attacked us. Again, it's because this stuff is not super complicated, but if you're not like into the cybers, as it were, you're not going to be like, oh, what's the collective threat group, threat model versus a group model? And people say, like, what team are they in? And I'm like, well, who says they have to have a team at all?
Yeah.
You could just turn up, like I said, you could turn up and be like, oh, I've just social engineered someone. Here's the set of creds. Give me $5,000. And then I'll never speak to you ever again. That's it. I'm done. And I just don't, I think it's really hard for people to comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
does
I don't
play.
think that the cybersecurity reporting does the industry much of a favor, because that is so muddled in how people report on this as well, and just kind of adds to that confusion in trying to parse apart, well, what actually happened, who's doing what. I like the term you use, fluidity of threats, and yeah, I think so many people, we want black and white because that's easier to understand, when in reality these groups are not kind of just in those set boundaries, and there is overlap, and they're adaptive as well.
I'm going to set up, like, I don't know what we're going to call it, like dragon spiders. There you go. So if anyone joins dragon spiders, don't worry. We'll like plan a whole operation and then someone kick your door down. If you don't get hit by something, it seems like it's impossible. Oh, that's someone else's problem. And then if you read a breach report, you're like, oh, well, that's another breach report. If you're a victim, there's a huge impact to you. And I think that gets lost, right? Because we live in an age where everyone is pwned daily, weekly, every month, every quarter. I don't know, it would depend on the person, right? And how many services they've signed up to. But there are breaches constantly. And I think people have lost like some sort of understanding of, yes, we have breaches, but we shouldn't be accepting that, right? We should be stopping them where we can, and we should be doing things better. That's like a super important message, I think, is this is not impossible to stop. You can absolutely build systems, networks, and organizations that can be very resilient to being compromised and can be very effective.
Obviously, you've been tracking this very closely, the Online Safety Act within the UK, ostensibly to protect children. Won't somebody please think of the children, and and their access to the internet and what that means. I'd be really interested in your thoughts on the approach as it currently stands under the law, and suggestions for better approaches, because I think it's not just, as not just playing out in the UK right now, it's happening sort of at state levels within the US, and there's a lot of discussion, on this side of the pond as well. So would really love your thoughts on that if you'd be comfortable sharing them.
I think the premise of helping kids is a great idea. I think the premise should always be to help everyone, right? I think as soon as you focus too much attention on specific a victim group or a specific area of society, and you don't consider the whole of society, you get problems in thinking. So there's that. There's clearly like some good parts of the intent, right? Intense. Isn't there's an expression like the path to hell is paved with good intentions or something like that, right? And I suggest this, like, I did some research really quickly a few weeks ago when this came into enforcement into the UK, and I've been looking at this subject for years, right? But again, I don't focus heavily on it. There are some things where, like, I was impressed to start with. But like the iPhone sub 13 category experience was pretty good. It started off pretty locked down. And I was like, cool, safe search is enforced on Google and Bing. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I started going to some other search engines and they just don't care. They don't look. There's no like industry standard for checking the safe search setting, which is mental, right? So you can go to Yandex, you can go to Yahoo. I was surprised at Yahoo. Like, I don't know why, but I was. So I think there's something really important here to recognize that what is the problem we're trying to solve? How its current state? What can we do that would actually help people, as in, help people see less harm? And I think there's loads of stuff there that's just been ignored. We could do some stuff around the HTTP experience in web browsers, where if you set the safe search feature, we could send like a header. This isn't the only way of doing it, but we could send a header with every HTTP request that says safe search, yes or no. It doesn't invade anyone's privacy. It doesn't identify child or adult. It just says, I want a safe or unrestricted internet experience. And adoption of that would probably help people. So yeah, I think there's loads of stuff that we could do if the mission is to help society, and including in that helping children have a safe online experience. We could do some technical changes that we can do as an industry. We do it all the time. Protocols and standards get changed. We could do some app store improvements. We could also consider asking people to educate and talk to their children.
Well, thank you, Daniel. This is, I really appreciate your time. This has been fascinating, and I really appreciate you having this conversation with us. So thank you very much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
That wraps up our episode of The Fishbowl. Thanks again to Daniel Card for joining us, and to Mike for being a great co-host. And thank you again to our listeners. If you like what you heard, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss new episodes. And you can also download the latest threat report on Europe. We'll include the link in the episode description as well. So thanks again for joining. See you next time.